Never before have I seen a film that made me want to learn about the craft of filmmaking so much as this. I am so excited to talk about this film. Join me after the intro for my thoughts on The Lighthouse. Hi, my name's Struan. Welcome to another review video on my channel. I have read so much about this film ever since it came out. The Lighthouse, starring Willem, Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. I had very high expectations because I got many recommendations as well from people I've seen on YouTube who have commented on my videos, and so finally I have been able to watch this film, and this is not a spoiler, but it's a phenomenal film. I am so happy that I finally got to see it. As per usual, I won't be talking about spoilers. I definitely don't want to spoil this for you. It's an experience you have to make for yourselves. But to give you the most basic idea of the plot, you've got two men who are looking after a lighthouse. It's supposed to be a month, but then a storm comes in and they have to hold out for even longer. And basically, to sum it up, it's a sort of horror psychological thriller because you are watching these two men descend into madness, basically. That's what the film is about. So the plot itself does not actually sound very interesting to begin with, but as you can tell, it is a very character-heavy, centric piece. So it all revolves around these two guys. There are no other people involved in this. So Willem Dafoe, he is an experienced wick, and he knows his way around the lighthouse. And Robert Pattinson, he's new to this, and he is doing the majority of all the really hard work. And Willem Dafoe's character bosses him around a bit much, telling him what to do, and complaining about things not being done correctly. And so you have tensions that gradually build as the days progress. That's pretty much all I'll talk about when it comes to the story. Again, I don't want to spoil this. I feel you really need to see it for yourselves. What makes this film really stand out is just the whole filmmaking of it itself. First thing you notice with this film is it's shot in black and white, and generally the feel of it and how it is shot makes me, although I am really not such a cinephile, so I am not an expert on old films. I do want to see old black and white films eventually. Problem is, I just have so many current films that I feel I want to get through, but eventually I'll get to them. Anyway, this film to me, it feels like something that could have been made in the early ages of black and white film. Well, not the silent films. I'm not talking about Charlie Chaplin-esque things, but when I think back to what's probably like 40s, 50s, something along those lines. That is roughly where I would place the film in terms of visuals. Just the way it's shot, the camera angles, you have this thing that I really like where you have the camera focused on a person and you see them react to something. Problem is, you can't actually see what they are seeing, so you have to really interpret it from their reaction, and I love that because it gives the actors a real possibility to show you what they are going through, and it's done very well here. You have a lot of close-ups, you have some magnificent scenes, you have various monologues going on. Both of the actors have various monologues, and both of them have scenes that really impress you. They really, really do. There's one particular by Willem Dafoe where his eyes, they look incredibly menacing. And it's such a stunning film when it comes to the performances, but I'll talk about them a bit later. So the camera work, like I say, black and white, and just the visual filmmaking. To me, the filmmaking, the way it's done, the shots, etc., it's a real callback to those films from the good old days. Not just that though, you've got the aspect ratio as well. It's not quite a square ratio, it's, 119 to 1, something like that, so it's nearly a square image. That's something that immediately, obviously, is aware to you, particularly if you watch it on a typical screen that we have nowadays, the wide screen with the HD. Obviously it's cut off to the sides. The funny thing about that is, due to the black and white filmmaking, there are some scenes where you don't even notice because it's so dark in the edges anyway, so it feels like the whole screen is actually full, whereas it's actually just nearly a square. It fits the tone perfectly. Again, as I mentioned, just the way it's made, it's supposed to be like a film from the 50s in my opinion, so that goes with it very, very well, and it's used very nicely because there isn't always a lot to see in each frame and in each scene. It's all very cramped. Most of it takes place obviously inside the lighthouse, so you've got many rather narrow spaces. It's just two people, so I feel it does actually help to not have the widescreen because you're really focused on what's going on right now in this shot. There are external shots, but all these usually happen with the camera placed a bit further away, so you can take in the nice surroundings. It's completely sufficient and you get to see all that really needs to be seen. The black and white was a very good choice here, and I watched the extras that were on the Blu-ray. Quite fascinating. They're not really long, so I recommend if you have the time to watch them as well. One thing that particularly fascinated me is they talked about the cameras they used, the lenses, the lighting, all these things and how it went together. Fascinating thing here is that there's one scene where Robert Pattinson explains that the wee light that they've got on the table while they're eating their dinner was actually so bright in reality that they couldn't even see each other. What's fascinating is when you see it on film, the whole thing looks so incredibly dark that that's so hard to understand really. And the reason they used it is because it brings out, together with the lenses they used, I'm not a hugely technical guy so I can't explain it to you in detail. If you want the details, watch those extras. But they bring out all the nooks and crannies in the face. So you have every wrinkle, everything is really highlighted. So once this is explained to you, you can really tell the difference. And what I also like is the black and white together with the lighting. It really helps you focus on what's important. I have not watched many black and white films, so this is something that was never really so evident to me like with this film. You're not paying attention to certain colours, maybe wondering why they wear this certain colour, whatever. You're focused on what's important because it's all just shades of black and white. And it really helps here because you're not paying attention to all the surroundings because most of the time they're not really important anyway. But you're so focused on the character, particularly when the camera is on them and the face, you can see every small thing that's going on there. Really beautiful. This to me is a really good example of a black and white film that really works nowadays as well. You'll get people who insist that everything needs to be in colour, so I wasn't one of those people. It's just that I never really got into black and white films, that's just it. But with this example, I say there's definitely no reason not to do films in black and white because it really, really works here. Although, again, it seems that the filmmakers really put their minds into it and thought about what they're going to do with every single aspect to make it a nice collective whole. They also explain that they use some lenses where the outer edges are slightly out of focus and they use this to highlight things as well. So again, never have I seen a film that has made me want to learn so much about filmmaking like with this, because it truly is a craft what's on display here. Returning to the actors, as I mentioned, a phenomenal job by both of them. It's not really hard to see why they as actors would be really interested in doing this film. Not easy, by the way. I mean, it's just the two of them and they only play off each other. As I mentioned, many monologues, and generally there's a lot of tension in many scenes, a lot of energy, and it could not have been an easy job to do, but both of them are really excellent. I don't feel that you can say one is better than the other. They all have their own standout scenes, really. All I can say is this is a great another installment. I'm one of those people who always thought Robert Pattinson was the Twilight guy and that's it. But with The Devil All the Time and this film that I've now seen, I really have no doubts that he is an excellent actor. So if you are a fan of either of the two, you have to see this film. They've got really great accents as well, by the way. Don't quite have in my mind when the setting is supposed to be. It's easily supposed to be 100 years before now, if not even more. And the language they use, the accents are really, really interesting. So I felt myself just listening for all these wee notes that are going on there when they're speaking. It's really hard to place this accent at times, but generally I thought it was very interesting to listen to it. Sound design is very important. As I said, it's a psychological sort of horror film, and so sound is something that is always very important, at least it is to me. Good horror is very many times really dependent on the sound, and this is what really works well in this film too. You have this foghorn. It continues pretty much throughout the whole film. It's really weird. I wasn't quite sure myself in the film where to place it. I was like, okay, does this mean there's a ship going by? But obviously later on you've got a storm, so there are no ships, but the foghorn still continues. The idea here seemingly is that this is purely for the audience. I mean, the foghorn sound itself is really beautiful. It's got so much volume, it sounds really majestic actually. But again, referring to the extras, it seems that this foghorn is placed to sort of gradually grind away at the viewer themselves, which I thought was a very interesting choice. But yes, it does recur, and like I say, it's a great sound, but it does really make you wonder why it's been put in there. Having received that explanation, it makes a lot more sense, but I just generally felt that this foghorn is sort of like a dark sense of foreboding that keeps returning to remind you something sinister is going on here. But apart from that, the sound design is excellent. You've got all these sounds going on. They're very, very meticulously and specifically placed. The soundtrack itself is great with the music. Another thing that's going on, as I mentioned, there's a storm, so you've basically got a lot of wind and rain spattering against the building. You hear that in the background for quite, I would say pretty much the majority of the film. And this is maybe slightly spoilery, but it won't really tell you anything about the placing in the film. But there's one moment where just the whole sound drops completely. And that is actually when you realise that, wait a second, there's always been background noise in most of these scenes going on with the rain, and suddenly it all just drops, and immediately, for me at least, it made my skin tingle, hair standing on end. So sound is used very well in this film, particularly to really make you be on edge. Altogether, a phenomenal experience. I highly recommend that you see it. As I said, not just for the story itself, which is great. It's a great examination of these two characters. I'm sure there's so much you can delve into there if you've got maybe even a degree in psychology or something like that. Analysing these two guys, I'm sure, would not be boring. Generally, all these things combine to a great work of art actually, because like I say, it's just stunning to look at, really beautiful, and a great experience. So, those are my thoughts on The Lighthouse. Have you seen the film? If yes, let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed it, what your thoughts were, or if you haven't, maybe, hopefully, my review will help you to decide to actually watch this film, because I feel it should not be missed out on. Like and share the video if you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel for more review videos, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.